Like a lot of people, I have brad and pin nailers in my wood shop, and like a lot of people, I use a small air compressor to run them, not one that has a central oiler, and that's good because I use the air compressor as, you know, for blowing dust off of things. I don't want oil in everything. I don't want oil coming down the airline. So for me, the best solution is to use these small inline oilers that just go between the tool and the airline. And I don't remember offhand which brand this is. I'll put a caption in the video if I can figure out exactly which brand and model it is. But anyway, I use the same kind, and I think just like a lot of other similar ones, there can often be a question of how to fill these up without making a huge mess. This one I just refilled yesterday because I had a project that needed it, and I think more than half the oil from the bottle went all over the tool, on my hands, in the trash can that was underneath, you know, instead of going in here. So I was looking around online, both YouTube and just Google searches, as well as the manufacturers, at least I think it's a manufacturer, maybe just the distributor of these things, and there was no information whatsoever. I put in calls to tech support for retailers and the supposed manufacturer in Kentucky, I think, and could get nowhere. There seemed to be nothing out there on the intended way that these should work. So this is my attempt to clarify how this, I think, should work. And granted, I haven't been using this technique up until now. This is my experiment with it, but I think it'll work out. I buy these little flux bottles on Amazon. I think they come in bags of 10 or something like that. I'll try to put a link or something in the video description or the caption or both. You can put water, vinegar, various solvents, all sorts of things, and they're often used for flux, hence the name flux bottle, but they're also used as oilers. And as long as the needle here is smaller than the fill hole on these oilers and allows air to escape when you're putting oil in, it should work. This is a popular air tool lubricant, which I have not used yet. I've used up the last dregs that I had in my little oiler can with a similar product. Anyway, I'm sure I bought this at Ace Hardware or somewhere. So this is what I'm going to fill the flux bottle with. Oilers like this typically have a small gasketed or O-ringed screw that's ostensibly there for filling it, and if you back that out, you're going to find some kind of a device on there, again a washer, some little round gaskety thing, or a small O-ring or whatever that hopefully keeps this from leaking out all over, and that screw has to be removed. See, there's that screw, and this one has what looks like a little nylon washer by way of a seal. And there's the hole it leaves. So anything that goes in there by way of a syringe or a filling device has to be smaller than that hole and still leave plenty of room for air to escape when you're putting in the oil. Alright, let's see how this works. I'm going to put the syringe in there and start squeezing it. But even doing that doesn't seem to work very well. Very little oil went in and it was already starting to bubble up around there. And I think what happens there is that the oil coming out of the syringe or the needle of the oiler, it's viscous and it immediately plugs the hole around it and doesn't allow air to get past it. If it was water, it would probably go in just fine because of the lower viscosity. But I believe here, because the oil is a viscous liquid, that it kind of chokes it by the oil and the air doesn't freely flow out. So then I vaguely remembered from years back hearing that you're supposed to turn this a little bit and that's supposed to make the oil go in better. It just came back to me. Let's see how that works. Well, some went in there, but it's still leaking out. Maybe I should try cracking that some more. Okay, I've cracked it quite a lot. But even that's allowing oil to come back up out of the top. So what if we unscrew it even more? To the point where the hole down there is almost outside of the now that seems to be working. I've got oil going in. I don't have any bubbling out of the hole. Unfortunately, the oil I'm using here is clear, so it's not so easy to see what's going on in there. Alright, I've been messing around with this and not really having great success. Sometimes it seems like if you give it a really firm blast of oil from the oiler, it gets through there and then kind of a bubble of air escapes and you give it several blasts like that. That seems to work. And I do recall having some success doing it that way, you know, years ago. I'm not sure it helps a whole lot to have the needle oiler. I'm still getting oil bubbling up out of there and it gets around there and needs to be wiped up. One thing it does allow me to do is push the oil all the way down to that fill hole there, where the hole from the screw here goes in and it comes out into the vial through that hole that I'm pointing at right there. It seems like I can get it down there, but the air that's trying to escape still pushes oil back up out of the hole. So that's not a perfect solution. Now I did find and by the way, I've had several calls into Tru-Flate, which I'm thinking is just a holding company now. You know, it's an office building in Memphis that seems to have a lot of brands. They don't seem to be a manufacturing facility there. Anyway, I don't recall ever having any printed instructions for them, and I found this photo. Somebody was selling one of these, the Tru-Flate 41-101. That's this. It's not what their website currently shows for the product, so maybe they changed it out with a different model, but still kept the same model number. I'm still trying to figure that out, if they ever return my call. But on the instructions that were on the back of this, the eBay seller luckily showed the front and the rear of the package. It says, turn off the air, remove the screw and gasket from the fill hole, unscrew the vial about 1/4 turn, to provide a slight opening between the O-ring end of the vial and the metal stem. So that is unscrewing this and about a 1/4 turn. I've done that. It doesn't seem to help to unscrew it more than that, and I think that's just giving a small amount of leakage around the gasket here to let air escape there. It's obviously not a perfect solution either. Insert tip of oil can spout into fill hole and fill vial with oil recommended blah blah blah. Screw vial closed, hand tighten only. Make sure the O-ring is fully seated in retaining groove on the vial. Replace the gasket and screw securely into the hole. That would be this. So those are the instructions. Now what I've got here is I'm putting the needle all the way into the hole, and instead of giving it a blast, I'm just giving it a slow squeeze in little pulses, kind of to, and then I move the vial in and out a little bit. I can see oil getting into there, but it's also bubbling up out of the top and running around the outside of the vial. And some of it's also squirting out around the gasket. It's really a pain in the ass. I'm seriously thinking about changing these out for some other brand or design if I can't get a better answer from Tru-Flate in the very near future. I tried propping the air tool at a bit of an angle here, and wanted to see if that might make any difference. Once again, the oil would rather come out the fill hole than actually go down inside. But if I jam the needle all the way down in there, and you can kind of see it coming in there, it's still coming out the fill hole, but more is going into the vial. Then I'm pulling the needle out, hoping to let it breathe, but it seems like the viscosity of the oil is preventing most of the air from getting out. I think all the air that's getting out is escaping at the gasket there, where we cracked it open a little bit by partially unscrewing the vial. So once again, I got the needle in all the way. I'm still getting a big mess down here that's running out. A lot of oil going where it shouldn't be going. Well, so much for that experiment. Alright, trying the old style oiler can again, but this time trying to crack the vial a quarter turn like they say in the instructions. Alright, I've turned the vial, actually more than a quarter turn. That's about there, and then a quarter turn. And I'm going to put the nozzle of the oiler right in there as tight as I can. I have to give it a few pumps before anything comes out. Well, stuff definitely is going in, but it's also running all over the top, so no improvement. Well, I've pretty much given up on these things. They're very problematic as far as getting the oil into them cleanly. I'm not actually sure how well they're holding the oil. This one here is, I don't know if it has oil in it or not because it's clear oil and I can't really see it unless there's an air bubble in it. This has got the other stuff that's a little yellow, a little easier to see. But I was looking around for a suitable replacement, and these guys show up just about everywhere. These are supposed to be the same brand as these, but their number is L102N, and they have a different oiling port on them, which looks like it may be easier to use. So let's check that out. So these guys are the same physical size as the old ones. They are built similarly. I don't know what metal they're made out of. It doesn't feel quite heavy enough to be steel, but it may be. So the same physical length pretty much, the same width of oil cavity in the vial. The main difference seems to be that instead of filling it here, it fills it here. These don't come with any instructions, so I'm presuming it's more obvious than the old ones. Alright, the old oilers and the hose fittings, quick release hose fittings, have all been unscrewed. I need to clean out the Teflon tape that I was using as a sealer in there, and then I will put these new ones in their place. Alright, old Teflon tape cleaned off, new Teflon tape put on. Okay, just doing a leak check. I don't detect any leakage around here. Let's try the other one. There's a little leakage up here around the head, but nothing down here. So that should be good as well. So I think we're ready to add oil. Alright, I've removed the filling screw, and you can see there's a gasket in there. It seems more like it's intended to stay put, like it's not just a washer. So I'm going to try to fill it through there and see how well the filling goes. I'm going to try it with my traditional squeeze oiler on this one. Yuck. Well, it looked like oil was running out the outside, but when I got it with some paper towel, it came away dry, so maybe that was just oil running down the inside. That sure looked like it was on the outside. Yeah, that was, so some was running around the outside there. Alright, there's oil in there. I didn't completely fill it up. It's maybe 2/3 full. It was certainly easier to do that, but that was with it laying flat, and I'm going to try it now with it vertical, see if the air flows out of it easier. Alright, that was a little easier, having it kind of tip like this and filling it. It seemed to let the air out a little bit easier. There's still a problem though with the viscosity of the oil trying to block the hole, and depending how fast you're putting the oil in and some other factors, it may still try to make the oil run outside rather than let the air out. I'm going to try it with my needle oiler on the other air gun, or the other brad nailer. Okay, now with my flux bottle with the clear, slightly colored oil, see if this works any better. I'm going to put the needle actually into the vial. Should let plenty of air out that way. Unfortunately, this is a really slow way of adding the oil because it's going through the needle, so it takes a while to fill it. Just a constant squeeze, and you can see the level rising there. That's actually not too bad. And there it's nearly full.